This week we check out the epic battle of North versus South.
Plus, we'll take a look at Oscar nominee Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, tonight on the Front Row.
I never thought I'd live to see the day that the President of the United States would raise an army to invade his own country.
Philosophies and bolts clash in the sprawling Civil War drama Gods and Generals, now in theaters. Robert Duvall heads a cast of hundreds, if not thousands, in this historical retelling of the early days of Southern Rebellion. Duvall takes center stage as General Robert E. Lee, but for the most of this 4-hour film, it's about Lee's favorite commander, Stonewall Jackson, played by relative newcomer Stephen Lang.
God has fixed the time for my death. I do not concern myself with that. That's the way all men should live.
It's important to note that Gods and Generals is actually a prequel to the 1993 film Gettysburg. And it's also important to note that both films are produced by Southern billionaire Ted Turner. I say that because although it does play both North and South in a respectful light, the film leans very heavily to a Southern perspective. The word slavery is rarely mentioned. But politics aside, Gods and Generals as a movie is one of the most boring, long-winded, self-absorbed films ever made. It's a full 4 hours of endlessly whiny speeches about God's relationship to man, man's relationship to man, man's obsession with war, and, in one extremely odd speech, man's relationship to Shakespeare. All valid and interesting topics for a dinner conversation, not as effective in the Battle of Richmond.
An army is power. Its entire purpose is to coerce others. No, this kind of power cannot be used carelessly or recklessly. This kind of power can do great harm.
The characters don't have relationships, they speak at each other, endlessly. I mean, after all, if you can get your point across in 2 words, well, why not use 50? And as for the battle scenes, after the first 5 minutes, it's about as compelling as a rerun of F Troop. As a film critic, I'm a glass-is-half-full kind of guy. I mean, after all, every film, even the bad ones, are the result of many thousands of hours of hard work from dedicated people. So, in that regard, here's the needle in the haystack. Robert Duvall does a great job as General Lee, and the costumes looked authentic, which is worth about half a star out of 4. Gods and Generals, now in theaters, is rated PG-13. This week's Best Picture highlight is also an epic tale of warring nations. The second edition of J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings saga picks up where last year's A Fellowship of the Ring left off. This time around, the motley crew of elves and humans sent to destroy an evil ring are broken up, and we follow 3 distinct stories across the lands of Middle-earth. Director Peter Jackson builds a completely compelling world of mythical proportions. Production design and character-generated effects are so lifelike, you forget that none of it really exists. Now, personally, I'm not the biggest fan of this whole Lord of the Rings saga, but I did enjoy the second chapter much better than I did the first one. The characters and story seem to move with interest and purpose, not just wandering around the forest aimlessly. There's no denying the thought and creativity put into this Best Picture nominee. The Two Towers is also nominated for a number of technical awards, including Best Special Effects and Sound Design.
Join us for the arrival of the Subway KQ2 star for a day right before the Oscars, and of course join us for the Oscar ceremony March 23rd. That's all for this week. Join us next time right here on the Front Row. I'm Bob Shultz for KQ2.